says it's not detecting my camera.
Oh, interesting.
Can you guys hear me
It
okay?
worked before. Yeah, we can hear you, Daniel.
Okay.
So the it's just you know, I've done Hangouts a couple different times with different classes, and so I decided to just kind of take the lead for this week, just to kind of get us started. So that's really just kind of how it happened. Sometimes groups are sometimes no problem, but groups are sometimes odd, you know. Sometimes sometimes they work out great, sometimes they don't. Hopefully we'll do well. It seems like it because everybody responded right away, and you know, everybody seems to be, you know, paying attention, so that's a good thing. So hey Zach.
Hi.
So we just started. Does somebody want to volunteer to do an opening prayer?
I can.
Thanks. Thank you.
Go ahead. Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful that we could gather as a class and discuss this case about teamwork. Please help us to learn from each other and to acquire new knowledge. Again, we're very grateful for this opportunity. We're thankful that we get to go to BYU Idaho's. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Thank you. So just to kind of to start out, so you know, did everybody get an opportunity to read the case?
Yes.
The Army crew.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm telling you, that's a crazy sport.
Yeah.
It's like you know, just the smallest thing just throws it all off, right? So that's kind of crazy. But
that was surprising.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting sport. One of my best friends, her son did it in high school, and started like his junior year. So he didn't even, you know, he just ended up starting it late in his career, you know, his scholastic career. So, but he was telling me about it, and it's just really kind of crazy. So, you know, some of the things we want to hope to learn from the discussion is that, you know, how teams work together, trust, conflict, how that has a role on a team. Certainly it doesn't take much before it can spiral upward or downward. You know, teams, there's individual participation for everyone. So, you know, there's a couple different questions, and, you know, talked before I went live, so I'm just going to repeat it again. I guess when you go into, if you're going to be the leader, when you go in, there's a piece that's the discussion prep for everybody, and then there's the discussion prep just for the person who's the leader that day or that evening. So, you know, I'm just going to kind of go through the different questions that they have here, and, you know, let's have some good, I guess, spirited discussion and talk about it. But and then at the, you know, at the end, it's my responsibility, or it's the leader's responsibility to then post the URL to the discussion board, you know, to prove to Sister Johnson that we, you know, that we had the class, and so she can watch and see the discussions that we had. So, so what role did trust play in the problems the varsity crew faced? So, you know, little synopsis of the is there was a crew team for Army, the varsity team, and for some reason the JV was outperforming the varsity team, even though the varsity had the stronger players. So what, you know, what did we see were, you know, what role is trusting other rowers necessary for a crew team success? So what are our thoughts on that?
Can I ask you a question? So I did the discussion prep, which is like there's like 4 questions to myself, and I answer it. So the question that you're giving us is from the leaders one, and then we don't need to discuss about this prep one for all students?
Yeah, and I didn't, you know what? I didn't, I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't look at the one for all students, so I can look at that one really quick and take a look at it. But yeah, no, it's different. I think the ones for all students, I think just gives us an opportunity to, when we're reading the case study, these are some of the things that we should talk about and ponder.
More
And-
individual preparation.
Yeah, for kind of individual, to kind of focus on maybe concepts of what's going on. But then when you go into the leader portion, it really does ask different questions than are there. So I guess it's really kind of, you know, your own individual ones, and then, you know, and then what we discuss as a group. So yeah, they are different.
So what was the question again? Sorry, it was how did the
Is trusting other rowers necessary for the crew team success?
You know,
So-
I think it's absolutely critical, you know, in this racing game that they play here, because I know they were talking about in the case study how if one person gives in a little bit too early, the other players aren't supposed to compensate for that. They're supposed to trust that other person will, you know, get back into his rhythm and be able to pull the team like he's supposed to. So I think that's a huge part of it.
just the way they're situated on the boat. There's an individual who's at the, I guess it's the back of the boat. They row with their backs to the direction they're going, but he can't see what's going on behind him. So if there's any problem with the guys behind him, he's not going to know who it is. He's not going to know what's causing the problem. So, you know, he's in that position at the head of the boat, where he has to completely have faith and trust in his team behind him.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that. And, but, you know, and it's interesting in this case, because I don't necessarily think that they didn't trust each other. There was just something about, there wasn't a lot of humility amongst them, right? Like they all just pointed fingers and blamed more than really kind of taking some responsibility that they were doing. And that's why they weren't successful. Somebody's got a lot of background noise. I'm not sure if they're.
Sorry, it's my children.
Oh, well then that's fine. Sometimes it's the microphone. So, the JV team, they're just, you know, there was that little part where he had them kind of write emails to each, you know, write the email and give encouragement or whatever. And the varsity team spent all that time just kind of pointing fingers of who wasn't doing what they were supposed to, and they felt like they were working harder. But yet the JV team were very supportive of each other and
Yeah, I noticed this.
complimentary to each other.
They said we a lot during the emails, but the varsity team people's email was I. It was all about I. Yes, I definitely noticed that. Individual versus like as a group, how they think about.
And I think you see this a lot, and I like basketball a lot. So another good example of this is like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who their expectations were so high that they would often just have these internal struggles within their team organization, despite all their talent, would create distractions that they couldn't overcome when it was time to put it all together and win a game. So each individual player might have been more talented than their opponent, but they would often stumble against weaker competition. And contrast that with the team that has nothing to lose, like the JV team. They get to go out with nothing weighing on their shoulders. They're racing against the better team. All they have to do is put in their best effort, and you know, they have a lot of room to grow versus the varsity team, which is expected to win versus the JV team every time. They just, I guess the incentives, the way the incentives are structured for the two teams, team with nothing to lose, they have all this incentive to win, and when they win, the glory and honors, RC team wins, like, well,
Yeah, it's interesting, because even kind of towards the end when he was moving people around, right, and he was like taking them and putting them in the different boat and seeing if it worked differently. Still, it was kind of that dynamic of when they had all of those JV, the original JV boat. That's when they were so successful. So it just kind of. It was just interesting how, has anybody worked on a team like at a job, right? And sometimes it's just that one person that either lifts everybody up or brings everybody down, or if one person isn't there, it changes the whole dynamic of the team. So it's kind of that same thing. So even in each individual person has to provide for their own input for the team, and if they don't, the team won't work. But you have everybody giving 100% on the team, or thinking they're giving 100%, but the team still doesn't work if you don't have that trust factor there. I think that's a big piece of it, that you have to, I know what I'm going to do, but I have to believe that the other person, the other folks on the team are going to do the same thing.
I read the other day one of the talk is that if you are for each other and trying to lead each other, and if one person just a little bit, the balance is off. But if you're closer together, when you're closer together and then lead each other, people can support each other. But it has to be a teamwork, and one person leave and then nothing worked, then it's not working from the beginning.
Right.
For some reason, I remember reading this case the first time in one of my other classes, and it being like the most frustrating case to read, and then also feeling like there was just no good solution. But then rereading it this time, I don't know what I've learned in the intervening months, but yeah, just what you said about, leaning in, it just looked, it was so obvious that, like, no matter how simple rowing seems, no matter how, rudimentary the elements that go into successful rowing appear to be from a layman's perspective, like you said, if the team's not leaning in, if any one of those team members is leaning away, or there's animosity between them, it sends tremors through that entire boat. Not just figuratively but literally, where they're losing performance all because they don't trust each other and they're not helping each other out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I don't know if this is the discussion of this case, but I remember when you hear about that and being really perplexed, a problem to solve.
I mean, I know I see this a lot in the workplace also. I mean, I work at Walmart, and when my manager is gone, there's a few of us that they like to kind of take charge and make sure people know what they're supposed to be doing and make sure we're being productive. Sometimes the newer people don't completely understand how to follow the directions, or people don't trust that those that were up in charge really know what they're supposed to do. And it's just a big mistrust. Things don't work out. It's just sometimes we're just a lot less productive than we should have been.
Part of this lesson, because what you're describing there sounds a lot like
the opposite of the fearless performance reviews. You know, just that attitude, like the manager. And that creates that attitude of distrust between managers and the team members, and everyone's just got a lot of animosity. I can see how that.
Oh yeah, I mean, did you else read the other readings that we had, like the fearless performance review?
Haven't.
I'm still working my way through.
Yeah, it was just interesting, and it's so funny because my company's going through the performance appraisal system right now, and I was talking to my manager like, oh, it's so interesting. I just read this whole article about how everybody hates performance reviews. People who are giving them, the people who are getting them. It just never seems to, it's never a fun exercise for anybody, And he was like, well, that's for sure. So it's just it was just interesting to kind of tie that together with this, because there's a couple things. First of all, this is an Army team, so these are military people. Like, they're used to following orders. They're used to kind of all marching blindly to the same drum and just following direction or whatever. So the thing I found most interesting is kind of the egos that were on this team when it's an Army team, when it's a military team. Like, to me, I guess they don't really leave their egos at the door, because some of them can have pretty big I'm an Army, you're not kind of attitudes, but usually when they're together, there's more of that kind of teamwork, brotherhood, being there for each other. And there was just a lot of infighting and conflict and everything, which I found interesting. And I remember last time reading it for my other class too, thinking the same thing, like, wow, I just expect a group of Army men to just be better than that. I don't know, just not be so backbiting or finger pointing, I guess. So it was interesting to me, both times that I read it, that same thing kind of came to mind. So
about, like, a lot of times when you're successful, when you're winning all the time, or when you're making a lot of money at your company or whatever, things just seem to flow better. Everyone's getting along, everyone's having fun, it's fun to go to work, it's fun to go out and row. But the moment adversity strikes, and it always strikes eventually, you always hit something that causes a hiccup or a problem. It's like, how do you avoid deteriorating in the face of that adversity? Because if this team had never lost to the JV team, say they just kept performing, then maybe they don't completely fall apart, but that one loss to the JV team just exacerbated other problems, and it kind of turned into this huge mental nightmare that came about. And so, yeah, to me, it's like, how do you maintain team dynamics in the face of problems that are inevitably going to arise?
Definitely with there before you even have competitions or anything, each other, and everyone's getting along, and then when that adversity strikes, then base to kind of fall back to and to rely on, and then you're just like, oh, everyone's friends and we're not doing too hot, okay, let's step it up a notch as a group. I think it'll be a lot easier instead of just bringing a bunch of different guys with their own ideas, their own talents, not really knowing each other, and then telling them to work as a team and try to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting too that even when they beat them, they were annoyed that they didn't beat them by enough. It's like, are you ever going to be happy? Let's focus on the right thing. Granted, they should have been better based on their scores and their talent and all of that, but it just like they just wanted to be miserable about something. They just didn't want to be happy, you know? Do you think that they would have done better if they didn't have the competition of the JV team, if they were just practicing by themselves and just kind of learning? Or do you think that they needed that kind of competition to keep them focused?
I think they were put in a situation where there was really no way to win, because if they beat the JV team, well, they're the varsity team, so they should be better than the JV team anyway. But if they lose to the JV team, you know, then it's going to be something that they should be embarrassed about, because they are an inferior team to them. So I think putting them in that position really didn't have any benefit at all for the varsity team to begin with. I think there was just really a no-win.
That's a very different perspective, Dan. Thanks. I didn't even think of it that way, and you know, I think I agree with you there.
I was wondering about like the whole team dynamic of splitting up into JV and varsity, because that's a fairly universal approach to any sports. You know, if it's basketball, you got your starters. If it's because you always want to have those reserves, and those functionally become your JV unit, and then they step up into that varsity role as needed. So you need to develop both of them. And so to me, like, and I totally agree with Daniel what he said there. And the one thing that seemed to be missing from the process that delineated these groups, JV and varsity, was some assessment of their leadership qualities, some accounting for, because it seemed like they were measured almost exclusively on their physical ability, their proportions and their speed and strength, with the exception of a couple of guys who got demoted to the JV team because of considerable lack of social skills, I believe. So with that exception, all the strongest guys just went on to the varsity team, and nothing was done to make sure that mix of personalities was ideal. That wasn't until later in the matrices that they discovered, oh, we don't have any leaders in this group.
That kind of reminds me of the movie Miracle.
I love that movie.
Yeah, and that there's the best of the best couldn't beat the Soviets, but when Coach Herb got all the college kids together, ones that didn't really know each other, then he put them through a lot. He made them a team, and they didn't have enough talent by themselves to beat the best team in the world, but they had to rely on each other's talents. And yeah, they went through some pretty heavy training to really slim them down to be that perfect team. And yeah, that process I feel like is crucial to having a team that can perform well and accomplish the task or accomplish the goals that you set out. Is just having a team that's already gone through some, I don't know, slim pickings of talents and abilities to work with other people.
That's sort of like the anomaly of the underdog, which is, you know, what enables this JV team in this instance, or the American team in the Olympics that year. Was it the 70s or 80s?
It was 84, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got that interesting mix of variables that enables Argentina in the Olympics when they beat the U.S. as an example, where inferior teams are able to beat their opponents. And so the weird thing for us is, I love the underdog story. I'm rooting for the underdog. But this case is kind of about, how does the favored team, how do they make sure they win every time? How do the Lakers make sure they win every season? And to me, that's not as fun a question, but it's also, as I was listening to that account of Miracle, it's like, so what do the Russian team need to do when they lose to the Americans what do they have to go home and do to make sure that never happens again? And I'm trying to think, like, what's the answer to that? But I think what the answer is especially with the JV team, it's your competition isn't with the JV team. The varsity team is, the minute they lost the JV team, or even the fact that they were racing as the JV team, they must have had it in their minds that their competition is with the JV team. And if they would have realized that it was never with the JV team, it was always with themselves or with whoever the best rowing teams in the country were, and kept that as their focus and didn't let their performance against this JV team affect their mindset.
Yeah, I mean, their practicing was really just to make them a better team. So instead of getting frustrated that they weren't beating them, they try and figure out what do we need to do to beat them. Because you're right, that wasn't their competition.
And they got to learn that there's something wrong with that team.
Absolutely. Do you think that the coach should have stepped in sooner to try to do something?
4 days before. They could have done
He
it.
focused a lot on statistics, right, as opposed to focusing on human behavior.
As I was reading the case study, it seemed like the coach had some really vast experience in the field, and this was something that was kind of an outlier, something that he hadn't faced in the past. I mean, he had his go-to plan where he was able to build successful row teams in the past, and for one reason or another, the case doesn't really allude to an answer. It kind of leaves it up to the reader, but one way or the other, something was just off, and he couldn't figure out what it was. The statistics were right on the money of where they should be. He gave a couple of possibilities of why they weren't working very well, but in the end, I think it kind of like all you guys have said, we can relate to many different things that we're all interested in, whether it's sports or our personal lives or whatever. And that was something that was kind of interesting about this case. I think it can kind of segue into anything that you want it to, because just like Zach was saying with Walmart, I mean, sometimes the productivity is just not there, and it can't be described or can't be explained. There's just something that's off, and it's probably a number of things, I guess. But I thought that was what was really interesting about it.
Yeah, what do you think that he should have done differently? Like, they're asking us to be very specific about how we think an intervention would have helped the team.
Well, I guess I'd be curious to know. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Well, during retreat, they should have building teamwork.
I was going to say, how much of an anomaly was the JV team beating the varsity team? I don't think, say in the case, out of his many years of experience, how often that had occurred before. But he seems pretty perplexed by it, which makes it sound like that occurrence isn't usual at all. Typically in the past, when he's made his JV team and varsity team designations, the varsity teams perform better. So he obviously jumps right into the problem as soon as it becomes a pattern, but maybe that first instance of the JV team outperforming the varsity team should have ignited a quicker review process. Because the one thing he notes is it's not like the JV team's getting better. They're just racing at the same speed they've always raced. The varsity team's just slower, so I guess that would be the question I'd have, is how rare was just that? And if it was super rare, then the one thing I'd say would have been more immediate, instant intervention.
So could it also be like, maybe he should have been looking at how he determines what is varsity and what is like your JV. I mean, sometimes you have JV or varsity levels, and we've had some sophomores play on our varsity teams in high school, and they perform more. So is that something that he should be looking at as more performance and experience, or no?
Yeah, I think he looked, like I said, he looked at statistics, and he's, I guess in the past, always felt like if you scored higher on whatever, your physical fitness, and you scored higher on individual scoring, that made you the best of the best, and that's how you got to be varsity. Yet those that scored less, they just kind of had more heart. And I mean, I'm a human resources manager for a pharmaceutical marketing company, do a lot of interviewing and things like that. And, there's some things you just can't teach people, right? They have to bring it themselves. They've got to bring that will to do it no matter what, and give 100% no matter what. In pharmaceutical sales, you're on your own. You have to get yourself up out of bed, and you have to get yourself out of the house every day. You don't have to punch a clock. Nobody else is looking over your shoulder. Your manager works with you once every 4 to 6 weeks, for a day and a half. So the rest of the time you are pretty much on your own, and you have to have that self motivation and work ethic to get it done. So you can have somebody who can sell anything to anybody, but if they don't out of the house and do the job, it's not going to matter. You could have somebody who doesn't have maybe the best selling skills or technical skills, but has that will and the heart and the work ethic to do it, and they're always going to be a higher performer. So again, this is a sports team, and you typically put your best players in, right? Those are the ones you're going to play. But there's been a lot of anybody that watches sports sees time and time again, sometimes it's just that clutch player that gets in there and just plays with their heart and gives it 110% and makes it happen because they just maybe want it more. I don't know. Let's see. So what do we think that he should do on Tuesday? I guess Tuesday was the day of the meet. And why do we think that?
I guess this is why this case was so frustrating, because he's really painted into a corner at this point. I don't think he has an option besides just promoting the JV team to the varsity position and letting them race, because that's kind of where the teams are at right now. The best performing team is the quote-unquote JV team. So that's kind of where I came down on that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It seems like the JV team just wants it more. And I think that's really who should be the one racing, is the team that wants it the most.
Well, they have skills, so they just need to work together. And was it last week? I don't remember where I learned, but Elder Bittner's talk from last week, leaders need to teach their people without the leaders. You have to think about their future, not how you look at JV varsity team. You've already picked the best brayer, and then you wanted to work with them. Then it's not time to switch around. You have to believe in them, and then hopefully they will work together and bring the best, not only the performance, but best out of. And so, only 4 days. He need to focus on that.
Yeah, like give the varsity team a chance at an actual meet, and just remind them why he picked them, to try to boost their spirits, to try to get them working as a team. And then and maybe not even have a varsity or JV per se, just have two teams going at it, trying to compete to race in the match.
That's actually a really good point. Like, what if this entire thing had been framed like you just said it, where it wasn't JV varsity, it was, hey, these are the teams, we got them split up, and now you're competing for the top spot. And that would have created a totally different dynamic, I think. So I like that idea.
Yeah, no, I do too. I do too, because, you know, in the real world, right? They're not going to be racing against a JV team. They're going to be racing against other varsity teams and other, you know, the best of the best from other branches of the military. I don't know if they have any other, you know, I don't know how that works, but so, you know, it's kind of a mindset, right? Like, he wasn't referring to them as the varsity and the JV team. Wouldn't feel like they were losing to an inferior group. The A team and the B team, or just, you know, team P and team Q, whatever, you know, they wouldn't have that automatic, oh my gosh, we're losing to a lesser group of people. And that would change the whole mindset. So maybe just changing up the wording that they used. I don't know if it's a necessity in the sport. I wouldn't think so. It's not like high school, right, where you have JV and varsity. I don't know. I don't know enough about the sport for it, but that's a really good point to just, sometimes you just have to, just that tweak, you know, you go from being a manager to a senior manager, or you go from being an associate to a supervisor, or whatever it is. It's sometimes that title makes all the difference in the world, and it can either make somebody work harder or take away their motivation. So I'm liking that one. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I'd say, like, with 4 days left to go, you could just kind of say, hey, we're going to race 2-3 times, and the best performing team in those preliminaries will be representing us at this meet.
Absolutely. There was in the leader portion, there was a, like what the coach did, kind of like a, you know, the result of some things. And it said that he lined up the varsity crew in 4 pairs. He told them they were to wrestle, no punching, but just to wrestle each other for 90 seconds. There were no clear winners. Each man was discovering that his opponent was just as strong and determined as he was. The coach then had them change opponents and wrestle again. By the 3rd round, they were choosing their own opponents. One guy would point at another and say, you. Finally, one of the rowers started laughing, and they all piled into a general brawl. Eventually, someone said, "Coach, can we go row now?" From then on, the varsity boat flew. You probably can't order members of an executive team to wrestle, tempting though as it may be, but bringing tensions out into the open and then resolving them is one of the team leader's most important jobs. So I thought that was interesting that he just kind of took it totally in a different direction. It had nothing to do with rowing, and it just had to do with kind of getting on the mat and wrestling and rolling around with each other to kind of put everybody on the same playing field, or maybe getting rid of that tension that, you know, that was there, and then they became successful. So, you know, I know there's a lot of companies that try to do team building exercises. I know my organization does it at least twice a year, where we do some team building, and just really get this out of the office and we went bowling, or we go to a baseball game or something. Just is totally different than what we do every day. Just to kind of change it up and put a different dynamic into the team. Has anybody else ever done any kind of team building?
A little bit. Nothing super organized. I was going to say that answer, that narrative, or what he did kind of blew me away, and it made me reflect on how, as a layman to rowing, I don't have the years of experience he has. So reading this case, my entire mindset was so stuck within the paradigm of, well, here's what's in the case, here's the material in the case, here's the elements to work with. It's all rowing, rowing, rowing. But yeah, that for him to do that, it just, for me anyway, it's so far out of left field, and it's like, oh, that's such a great idea. And it's interesting how you kind of get yourself stuck in this mindset of, well, it's a rowing case about people rowing. I'm learning all about rowing. The solution must be in the case, and then he does something innovative and outside the box and creative, and so testament to the experience he had and the intuition applied to the problem.
I agree. Anybody else have any kind of final comments or anything about what we discussed?
Well, yeah, hearing that last part too of like just pairing up the team and having them wrestle each other. It's almost like, okay, if you have this far-fetched idea of like a team building activity, give it a shot. It might work. It might help. And just don't blow it off to the side because you're just a little nervous or you don't think it'd work, or it's like you've got so-and-so won't like it. Like, just give it a shot and see what happens.
Agree. So what was the most important thing you learned about this this exercise, reading this case? So just everybody kind of take, a minute or so to just.
I think it's the thing that I got from it is it's absolutely critical that you have to be able to trust the people that are in your team. I think just, even little condescending remarks or joking or anything like that can, before a meet or before work starts or whatever it may be. I mean, just little things like that can really throw off the rhythm of a team. It's amazing. That's kind of the human element of everything versus automation or machinery is, there's that human element where one tiny little verbal, remark or something can just have a ripple effect and destroy the entire productivity of a team. So.
Good. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, my big.
Well, I always think of when you're in a team, and you're trying to accomplish something and things aren't going your way, try to think of what you're doing that could be hindering the team. You change that or fix that, adjust that, and then just kind of always look at like what you're doing that might be hindering the team. And you might be finding that, okay, you're the only problem with the team, and if you change, then things will progress or other things like that.
Good point.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like just taking personal ownership over the problem and not deflecting blame on people around you. My big takeaway is just what I said earlier. Hearing the resolution of that case was pretty eye-opening. So that was kind of just, especially where I read it before, and I remember being so perplexed and frustrated by my lack of good solutions. So to hear that he did something that really resolved this issue and that it was really outside of the box.
Does anybody else have any comments?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
As I said earlier, everybody has a great skills and strengths and everything. And even at work, anywhere, everybody has talent, everybody has good things in it. And I think you're not living by yourself in this world, and then you need to humble yourself too by not thinking like I'm doing this, I'm doing that, not I things. No, we always talk about it. Not focus on myself, but we need to really focus on what we're trying to achieve right now, and then it is something that I need to work harder, or we need to work harder. And I think humility is really important. So change yourself.
Good point. I attended a conference earlier this year, and one of the keynote speakers talked about the ideal team player, and they said there were three things that a person needed to have to be an ideal team player, right? And humble was the very first one, because unless somebody's got you know, some humility and some self-reflection, and, you know, can look at themselves first to see where they're contributing or not contributing. That's the most important part of the team. And then the second thing is to be hungry, to really want the team to be successful, and, you know, for whatever the goal is, to be able to meet that goal. And then the third thing is to be smart. And it's not so much book smart, but more people smart. Again, you know, you have to have self-reflection, but you also have to have social awareness to kind of see, you know, what's going on with the team, and if is there anything that you could be doing to make the team stronger and better. So, you know, I took a picture of it when he had it up on the screen, so that, you know, so that I have it all the time. So that's, to me, that's one of the most important things. So, just to kind of close out, I guess, you know, this was really on the fly, you know, me just kind of taking this first meeting, you know, to be the leader. Is there anything, you know, going forward that we, thank you, that we would like to see, or that you would like to see the leader do differently or better, or make sure that we do something, you know, specific, so that, you know, we're all prepared or whatever? Is there anything, you know, anything that I could have done differently or better, or what we want to see, you know, the next person do, so that, you know, these are productive? I think we had some good discussion, and we want to be able to continue to do that. So,
I had a question.
go ahead.
Typically, these are supposed to be about an hour long, and this one's looking like it'll be perfectly right around an hour. Is that in fact the case? An hour long is about what they're looking for?
It is. Like, if you know, when you're the leader and you look at the discussion, they you know, they break it into a couple different parts, and they say, you know, you should spend like 10-15 minutes on this, 10-15 minutes on that. So if you added it all up, so that's 15 to 20 minutes, and then 10 minutes, so that's you know, 25 to 30, and then 15, 35, 30, 50. Yeah, so they're saying it should be just about an hour.
So that's something I have a little bit of a weakness of, is like keeping things on time. I can ramble. And so I like that we're doing this, and it looks like we're wrapping up right around an hour, and that's something that when I'm the group leader, I'll really try and stick to. And so I guess just that note, that keeping it nice and concise and within that time limit, I think is a good thing to maintain.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate when you're doing it in this type of a format, with the Hangouts on air. It's not like you can send the link out much earlier than I sent it out, right? Because you have to set up the Hangout, and that's how you get the URL, and that's how you send it out. So, you know, if we could try to do that, you know, at least 5 minutes before the start, so that we can start on time, that'd be great. Unfortunately, just with this format, we're not able to, you know, you're not able to do it any differently than that. So, you know, that would just be my suggestion for, you know, kind of the next person. So, is there anybody that could, because I'm not good with this, to maybe put a Google Doc together, maybe a spreadsheet together, with that, you know, with all the dates, and we can sign up to be leaders for different dates that are good for us?
I'll do.
Thank you.
Okay. And
I'll make
and you'll,
it out.
okay.
Fine.
And you can either email it, I guess, to everybody, or put it on a Google Doc, and we can all access
Yeah,
it.
somebody set up a
Yeah,
Google
don't we have a
share.
Google Doc set up? Like,
Oh,
I don't
you
know.
did. Yeah, somebody set up a folder, right?
Yeah, so I'll put it there.
Okay. And then if everybody will just go on, I guess, and sign up for another week. I think, let's see, there's 6 of us. There's 14 weeks. We didn't do it the first week, so there's 13 weeks. So pretty much everybody has to sign up for 2 sessions to be a leader. Somebody might end up being it the 3rd time, you know, depending on how it works. We might not have to do it the final week either. So, so if we could,
that weeks that somebody has to triple it, but you don't need to send the report anymore because you've already done 2 times. That's what I read somewhere.
okay, that's
yeah,
good.
if you do it the 3rd time, you don't have to do the summary page.
Oh, right. I did read that. You're right. And I guess, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm going to be out of the country weeks, I believe 6 and 7. So I'm going to steer clear of those 2 weeks. Just a heads up.
Yep, I know, absolutely. And I think that's, yeah, I'm traveling a little bit in end of November, beginning of December. So yeah, just kind of look at our schedules, and certainly if we can be flexible, and if something comes up and somebody else needs to jump on, and take the lead, as soon as we could let folks know that. And then I guess really what we're going to be talking about mostly is this, the doohickey system. Has anybody looked at that? The doohickey?
I think it said it was due in week 5. So
Yep.
Yeah, it's like week 5, 8, 10.
Yeah,
Or something.
it's a couple different weeks. It's like a fictitious company that has a host of issues. So should be interesting.
I think one
So
thing
does
before group is just send out an email or something saying, okay, this is what we're going to read, or like we need to read this, prepare this, just be ready to questions.
Good point. Thank you. That sounds good. Now, Sister Johnson, I guess, is going to have her classes every other Tuesday, the hour before us, but I think hers are only going to last 30 minutes. So we should be okay to finish that one and then start this.
So are we required to go to that one for Sister Johnson, or is that just more of a office hours?
I don't think it's required, but she then posts it so you can take a look at it.
Okay.
You might have to
I don't
watch.
think that it's required to be there live. I know last week there was a lot of issues with trying to get on, and I don't know if anybody watched the screencast. Looked like there was only 2 or 3 people on it. So
Yeah, I gave up after I think
I was hanging out with somebody, with like 4 or 5 people on something else that, she wasn't ever able to get on. So,
I have
yeah,
a
it's
question.
a lot. Sure.
So, 5th, 9, and whatever that we have to do those doohickey things.
Uh-huh.
During this conversation, leading the class person is the one that have to report.
Yeah, I think the group leader is who's ever leading that week is the only person that needs to do the summary and report it.
Yeah, I believe we write an essay together as a group, and then the group leader submits it. Is how I understood it.
And I'll be out of the country 6 and 7, but not unavailable to contribute to essays. I just wouldn't probably be able to do a group meeting, but I'll definitely be able to help with putting an essay together and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, and I think the way to do that is just to use maybe Google Docs or something, and we can all just add our portion to it and have it all ready.
Yeah, I might need someone to give me assignments if I'm not part of the conversations where we.
Should I make the separate line just for that? That everybody's thoughts together and send it off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that's going to work yet. I don't know what it's going to look like, and if it's going to be questions like this, or if it's going to be, just a summary or whatever. So, but yeah, I think.
I'm going to set up a file right now and share with you, and we'll just call it the Doohickey Project. And it won't have anything in it for now, but we can start putting information there as we.
Yeah, I think
Sounds
that's a
good.
good idea.
Sounds good. Well, hey, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Is everybody? I'm on Eastern time. Is anybody else on Eastern time? Okay, and then Mountain time.
I'm Mountain.
Okay. Anybody on Pacific time? Anybody in California, Arizona, or Nevada? Okay. All righty. Just so that I understand, I just like to know these things. So, all right. Well, thank you all very much for getting on and participating. Looking forward to an interesting semester.
Yes, thank you for volunteering, Joan.
Yeah, that's good.
Take care.
Thanks.